Hi, this is Matt.
And this is Jesse.
This is the Future is a Mixtape. We'll be talking about the Slingshot 7.
Well, we'll be working our way towards what we call this collection of platform ideas.
But we're going to talk about Politicon and why Ann Coulter's blonde hair is so deceivingly evil.
And how we were just a few feet away from that this last weekend.
As we were selling our wares, which is just come to our website.
Utopian ideas.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just come to our website. It's talk to us about utopian ideas. How do we build a better future?
And how do we avoid the sectarian warfare that's happening and engulfing Bernie land?
Yeah.
So we have Bernard Kratz, we have DSA, we have all these things. We need to work towards a policy vision.
Yes. So what ought that policy vision be? That's what we're discussing.
And to make that rabbit cage larger.
Yes. Let's open up the space in that cage so we can...
We'll keep Ann Coulter in the rabbit cage just for fun. We'll make it a TV show.
All right. Enjoy. So that was something last weekend, eh?
It wasn't. We went to Politicon.
This was your idea.
Well, what was
I didn't even know about this until you suggested it.
Well, I knew about it because there were some really nice photos of the art gallery that I thought they would have.
I still never saw this mysterious art gallery you kept referring to.
Well, last year, I don't know. Well, the first year they had it at the LA Convention Center, so it might have been bigger and they're downsizing due to lack of interest. I don't know. But it was at the LA Convention Center the very first year. I had initially put somewhere that it was Pasadena that had it the last 3 years, but they said the cost meant that they got rid of the art gallery. I didn't see much art. I was told by one of the executives there would be art.
I still don't have proof that there was ever art.
Yeah, and it would have made it more like a festival, or it's called the Coachella or the San Diego Comic-Con of politics. But you didn't really get a festival vibe from it. It felt like just a convention.
It's hard to tell standing at our little
but
little
when we walked around, did you get a festival feeling?
Yeah, no, it's just like
because there's no art or music.
It was like much more conference.
It was much more conference organized. Yeah, it felt like a detox for people that are addicted to electoral politics.
But do you want to share what we did? How we spent the weekend?
Well, the 29th and 30th was the Politicon.
July 29th and 30th.
Yeah, exactly, end of the month. And basically, we're trying to let people know that our podcast exists.
We're here.
Hello, we lack woofy, if you know our prior episodes on that. We don't lack the kind of built-in audience that other people have. So we're going to straggle through and look for places.
We don't lack it? We get in your...
I don't... Blenderhead. But
we lack the built-in audience.
We lack the built-in audience.
Yes, there you go.
And so we went to Politicon, and the prices were interesting.
Try to make connections, build that audience.
So it was like... Find
fellow utopians.
$400-$500 for like 2 feet more on the table and more black cloth. And then also like plugs to plug in thing. Yeah. And I think maybe free Wi-Fi. Like it was $25 a day for Wi-Fi access. Talk about fucking monetizing things, including Wi-Fi.
Hey, yeah. Another like all this stuff should be free, which we'll get into how this free
but
works.
It's called the Democracy Village. So our booth costs $200.
Hey, what else? Human right.
Yeah.
2017
Democracy
forward.
Village.
Well, no. Another human right, 2017, and moving into the future is internet access for every human being.
Free fucking Wi-Fi. The fact that we pay... Yeah. I mean, technology prices are supposed to go down except for internet connection. Suddenly, that just has to be as expensive. So those are some of the battles we had. And once again, there's not the People's Summit. There's not the kind of grassroots kind of place in LA that does events that works with activists and social change agents. But so we picked this... to kind of make connections, and we did.
Well, it was local here, so it was easy for us to get to.
The most surreal thing, and you noticed too, was the fact that we essentially had Ann Coulter, right? Literally, she was like
a few feet from us.
Yeah, she was 15 feet from fame, or really bad fame. Sort of Darth Vader with Goldilocks, and she was there about her book, which is
In Trump We Trust.
In Trump We Trust. So here we are with this utopian impulse. We want to talk about real ideas and policies.
Yeah, no, we're over there. So we're
15 feet away.
Yeah, so last weekend we spent 2 days tabling to tell people about the podcast, try to meet fellow utopian folks, progressive folks who want to fight for a better world. we're in there, and people are coming by. We're talking to them. We're chatting them up about utopian ideas, all the stuff we talk about on the podcast, and then
we found people to be really perceptive to it, right?
Yeah,
people that were not in our political.
It was a surreal kind of thing to be in this environment with all this red hats roaming around.
Yeah,
this convention hall, and Ann Coulter a few feet away, and Roger Stone.
The longest line was for Ann Coulter, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. But we met some really great, beautiful, wonderful folks, and some made some good connection. We'll be able to bring some folks onto the podcast,
and it tells you too, like fame isn't necessarily about having real ideas. Sometimes just being entertaining matters more than having ideas. And so Ann Coulter's
being some kind of caricature,
that you
being super tan,
and
having a tattoo of Nixon on your back.
Yeah, I mean, she had these gaunt eyes. It looked like
Stone.
Satan had burnt them out and put in fake ones. And so Ann Coulter was there, and our booth is literally like pretty close to the signing booth. So there's some other authors there. Roger Stone appeared.
Yeah, I mentioned that.
Joseph Goebbels of the Trump regime.
Yeah.
Except far less organized. I mean, you have to give it to the Third Reich. They were so much more organized.
Yeah, this is more professional wrestling style.
So yeah, so we don't know the effect. So we haven't had some huge bump in listeners, but we did make some good connections with other activists. And they're really, we went around to the other booths. They were like NGOs that were like, Pussy Hat Armada, and it was like Lady Parts Justice, which is a cool booth that had like Girl Scout badges for vaginas.
The normal.
Yeah, I mean the biggest environmental thing that I noticed was the recycling. That was like the most presence in the Democracy Village that we have a climate crisis was an image of a painted garbage can, right? Mm-hmm. And that was the political awareness. And we just generally thought like, I've never seen so many Trump hats. Never.
There's a lot of.
It's almost like if I'm a girl and I want to dress like a slut and not get made fun of, I wait for Halloween.
Yeah, it's kind of like
and so
Halloween.
It's like these are people that never got to get to wear their red hat in LA without being stabbed. And so they get to wear their red hat.
What? Wait a second. Being stabbed?
Well, I mean,
who the fuck is doing that? What?
If you're in Los Angeles and you're wearing
I hope that's not happening.
No, but if you're
happening, is it?
No, but
you're just making
I'm facetious.
Light.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but if you're in LA, are you really going to walk around and wear a hat called "Make America Great Again"? Yeah. I've never seen one hat in LA that I in my mind.
Yeah, day to day, I don't see.
No, and so there was like thousands of red hats.
I don't know thousands. I think you meant.
Yeah,
I think you.
Yeah, well,
there's a little bit of hyperbole
there was one of the rare few interesting panels that were there that was interesting. You went to the Black Lives Matter
that's really good
panel,
yeah.
And I think you said Melina Abdullah, an activist, she said to the audience that had red hats there, she said, "Red hats are the new white sheets," and I just must have been stunning to hear that.
Yep.
And then the other thing we should talk about. The other thing that actually felt like worth people's time that had substance was
a joke.
It was a joke. It was a prank.
It was a prank.
And it was the Yes Men, who are known as Andy Bickelbaum and Jacques Servan. Jacques Servan is his real name. Andy Bickelbaum is his activist name. And then Igor Vamos, who wasn't there, I thought he'd be there. He's known as Mike Bonanno. And so Andy Bickelbaum and Mike Bonanno are part of the Yes Men.
Well, they are the Yes Men.
They are the Yes Men, and they have these kind of names. And what was interesting is I actually ran into...
they're known as culture jammers.
Culture jammers, exactly. And they come from that late 90s kind of culture jamming period where Adbusters got funny. And I actually ran into Andy Bickelbaum. And the story with me is I had him come to UC Riverside for a 28ers event that was organized with the sustainability program at UC Riverside. So he came, both of them came actually, to do a conference presentation. They showed their third film called The Yes Men is Revolting. So I knew him well. Yeah. And I ran into him in Starbucks while I was doing student emails. So
the morning before
the morning of the first day of the conference. And he told me literally that he's going to do a prank and stunt. And I wouldn't have known about it because we're so busy setting up the booth. So I'm glad he told me, and I'm glad we ran into it.
Yeah,
so I got great photos. We'll post it in our newsletter of them doing their stunt. And essentially the panel was called Vox Populi Vox Dei, which stands for the voice of
which is Latin for
the voice of the people is the voice of God.
Yep.
And that was the name of the panel. And basically, Andy Bickelbaum was
posed as a representative from the DNC.
Yeah. And said these are our new platform issues. So
it's like, oh, by the way, we have this new. We apologize. We had this new platform sort of slogan come out recently, but really there was much more to it. And he's like, oh, here's the stuff that you didn't see that was all part of it.
And just generally, like, people almost cried in the audience.
What are the things he's...
universal basic income, Medicare for all, basically all of the policy platforms of Bernie Sanders.
And all the
so it was a mea culpa.
All the platforms that are widely popular amongst the American people.
Among the mass majority that the Democrats can't support because of their Rolodex of funders.
Yeah.
The corporate domination of the political party itself. Yeah. And the yes men have done this at crucial points where they get tired of just satirizing those in power. Instead, they do performance art where they embody social change.
Yeah.
And they've done this in the past, like one of their documentaries, I think it was the second one or the first one, where they actually printed, fake New York Times newspapers and passed them around the city, like something like 10,000 copies of what utopia would look like if you saw it in the newspaper. Like, what if we actually got things done and everyone was an activist?
Would you be reading on the front page?
Yeah,
of
it was like we are moving to global renewable energy by 2030, and so they've gotten tired of their own satire and their shtick because they also think there's other ways of using humor where you embody the things that we want to see,
positive ideas,
and so it's a kind of a new innovation. And I think what's great about them compared to Art Banksy is they're within that social practice sphere of art where they're actually like organically connected to social change rather than just making fun of it. So they've moved beyond, I think the really adroit, paradoxically beautiful commentary that Banksy makes ends up being a dead end, whereas they actually have transformed a lot of their performance art into a kind of manifestation of utopia. Right. So they've done this at pivotal moments in their documentary. So the new one is called The Yes Men is Revolting. So it was super exciting to see old friends. And we hope to have them on at some point. It would be nice to have them talk about the stunt that they put on and kind of do a detox for themselves. And like I said,
they're really good at it. Like I walked in just briefly to peek in and the people didn't know that it was a prank. It was like the DNC logo, and it was like
Andy Bicklum is really good at deadpan.
So he's really
good at deadpan, and he can put on an earnestness that feels really authentic.
Yeah.
And so that was good. And he had a fake beard.
That's why you say people were crying. It's like,
well, these are Democrats that are in there like
this is what the base of the Democratic Party, the base of the left wing is. That, as it's referred to, these are the policy sort of platforms that people want the Democratic Party to adopt and to push for. So that's what we wanted to get into or open up into in the discussion here, right, Matt? Is like, let's talk about where the left is at in terms of pushing forth a policy platform.
And if you look at the program for Politicon, I'm looking at it right now, there isn't really one on inequality, on universal basic income, on single payer.
Yeah, there's Black Lives Matter.
There's definitely identity politics as part of that manifestation because it's within the Lib Dem manifestation, what you call the neoliberal progressivism. So taking on civil rights with a pro-capitalist agenda. And so, of course, Black Lives Matter has no interest in capitalism per se, but liberals are certainly okay with taking in that identity politics manifestation, so long as they don't have to broach class. And if you look at the actual events, it's it's obsessions about Trump, it's about the traditional notion of identity politics, but it doesn't have anything called the climate catastrophe, nothing on universal basic income. And it felt like when I was there that it wasn't Politicon, it was like electoral con. Yeah. So it was really about electioneering.
This is just mainstream. What are you on the red team?
Yeah,
blue team?
We were hoping for something
Republican
more.
Or Democrat? I wasn't hoping for something more.
You assumed as such?
Yeah,
I thought the Democracy Village would be more.
Nah, man, I don't know why you thought that. Like, it's called Politicon, and the fucking headliners are fucking Ann Coulter.
Definitely from the website. So I was assuming
Chelsea Handler.
I was assuming the same, that it have like massive levels of celebutards, but also beyond that, I thought the Democracy Village.
Phrase?
Yeah, celebutards. Yeah.
Okay.
Beyond that, that's not a mistake. That was actually authentic.
I know. That wasn't
neologism. Yeah, I'll do the blunderhead.
That wasn't blunderheadness.
But I knew that was going to be that they're ramping this out as a kind of Hollywood version of politics. Right, they have the celebrities, and they keep ramping them up to sell tickets. But there's no art gallery, which I think was actually one of the most interesting things that I saw from photos. And then there was also, like, the Democracy Village didn't feel like a democracy. It didn't, there was no activist.
I don't know why you're hung up on the term. This is just like, do you not live in the United States?
I don't live in LA. You live in LA, so maybe you're cynicism.
This is not a fucking democracy, dude. Come on.
But
why do you think at this this mainstream sort of convention thing that the exhibit hall where they charge people to have a fucking 6 foot $200 to have a 6 foot table, that there'd be any kind of real democracy going on.
No. Well, but the idea is like if they wanted to, they could have had these open booths that didn't cost anything.
Yeah, it would have been.
Because they had space for it. It was like, it was not that full in terms of booth space.
I mean, it just brought up in our discussions off the podcast that we really wish we had been able to go to some of the other more progressive things this earlier this year, like the People's Summit or the Socialism Conference, both of which happened in Chicago.
And DSA now this weekend.
And then this weekend that we're recording this is actually the weekend of the DSA convention, also in Chicago. But I think it's, for me, just all of these things bring up, given the context of our discussion about the Labour Party's recent successes in the UK and Jeremy Corbyn's campaign leading the Labour Party there and their manifesto that what we need, what we keep hearing and people are demanding is we need, what are the ideas? What is our vision? Let's put forth
what are the policies?
A platform of real change.
So and the Yes Men took Bernie Sanders' policies and made them as a kind of pretend version of the Democratic Party, which sounds great, right? But if we think about Bernie Sanders, we can think about DSA versus the People's Party, right? So we were at a DSA meeting in the LA area just to meet folks and get feedback from them. And in the middle of the meeting, we had these draft Bernie
for People's Party.
Yeah, so it's draft Bernie People's Party. People's Party is at the bottom of their slogan, right? So there's already a problem there.
Okay, right? So let's start there, Matt. What about the notion of another political party in the U.S. electoral system?
Well, I think
a new sort of third party. What's your thoughts about?
Well, I think I talked about in the last podcast about the notion that what I thought would happen was that everyone would move back towards public financing and money in politics because they would realize that, okay, Bernie Sanders was a failure because he didn't have enough money. He couldn't outraise Hillary Clinton, but he actually raised enough money that Hillary Clinton was successful. So people thought, oh, well, maybe electoral politics will work.
Okay, let's pause there for 1 sec. I'm going to dive into that in just a moment. So you started this nonprofit called the 28ers to push for a 28th Amendment for exclusive public financing of elections in the U.S. Great, awesome, good idea. And this was born out of your involvement in Occupy, in the Occupy movement in 2011. The Occupy movement was about Wall Street. So Occupy Wall Street and about money and like the bankers. But it wasn't specifically like in an organizational sort of notion, even though it was a sort of loose catch-all for all kinds of things, bringing people out of the woodwork to occupy squares together and talk about a bunch of issues. But the thing was Occupy Wall Street.
Yeah.
It wasn't Occupy public financing of elections. So it seemed to me a little bit of a leap there to think that the energy there would then translate necessarily to a big tent idea conceptually about money in politics.
Well, I think you're wrong on this because Occupy Riverside, when I was involved with it, all of the issues that was being dealt with and talked about, it wasn't that everyone showed up because they cared about Occupy Wall Street. They thought, as the phrase went, shit was fucked up and bullshit in a variety of ways. We were in a dystopian drive on almost every social issue, every topical issue, everything with finance, kinship, politics, education, debt, immigration, police brutality. And if you look at all of those issues, those nodes, they're broken down and they're frustrated by money in politics. So if you did a causal link, right? I teach an essay called Speculating About Causes. If you look at police brutality, that's police unions. If you look at the fossil fuel industry, that's money in politics with the fossil fuel industry. If you look at healthcare, it's big pharma. And so in each and every case, it may not be the biggest. Politics. It may not be the biggest driver, but if you worked on that issue, you would advance all of those activists in a much more accelerated fashion.
I'm not disagreeing there.
Oh yeah,
I follow the causal links. I'm with you there.
It wasn't like people didn't disagree that it was a problem. They just didn't want it to take an electoral form.
Right.
And that was the kind of the myopia of that is it didn't have to take an electoral form in terms of electing the right candidate because you could have like the ERA Equal Rights Amendment Act, a state-to-state grassroots movement that wasn't about electoral politics.
Yeah, so here's we talked about this previously a little bit. I think money, the money system, and wealth inequality, absolutely. that CEOs getting thousands times more money
per minute, right?
Blinking these billionaires,
the
eight richest men in the world, or
fart out millions,
blink their eyes and they make more than we make in a year, doing actual sweating work. But I don't think popularly that this notion of money and politics doesn't seem to be on the surface, on the lips of, out in the noisosphere.
Well,
as a major thing.
It's not emotional enough.
It's not emotional and sexy enough.
It's not visceral enough.
That's exactly a root cause thing, absolutely.
Exactly, and that's the problem is people have to be motivated on an emotional, visceral response. And the problem is, how do we address public financing and money in politics on a visceral and emotional level? And no one's been able to do that other than Bernie Sanders' campaign, and that was because, of course, that was one thing of many things.
Well, there you go. Yeah. That's where I was trying to get. I think that if that's folded in as part of a manifesto, a whole program of things, it couldn't be. I don't think it's the lead thing. I don't think it's the necessarily the top 4 summary items, but it's it's a major chapter in a manifesto platform.
Well, I would say that initially, but before Bernie Sanders started his campaign, the biggest big tent movement, the biggest social movement was Wolfpack. Wolfpack was getting almost a state every other month and a half, and they had 5 states, and then it just froze up after Bernie's campaign. Yeah. So it did seem like Obamacare wasn't even up for debate.
Here's the thing. Most people, normal folks, don't have money or politics. So,
yes.
But healthcare, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
So,
but everybody thought Obamacare was the last word on it because when you talk about, we assumed Hillary Clinton was going to win or Bernie Sanders would. No way Trump was going to win.
But when you talk about everybody puts fucking gas in their car.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So when you talk about issues that have resonance in your own life, in your own home, in your own day-to-day interactions, I think money and politics takes a little abstractness and takes some abstract thinking, takes understanding causes, signs, and symbols.
I agree, but there was a moment where, once again, I have to just put the point on, which is that there was a moment where it was going to become the biggest issue before Bernie Sanders' campaign. And my feeling is if Bernie did not raise enough money, we would be talking about a different type of politics. Right now, because electoral politics looked potentially successful. And, if Bernie got 46% of the vote among Democrats from the votes that we were able to count, right, then that actually fed into the mythology that electoral politics will solve everything for us. So now all the Bernie supporters are in Green Party, People's Party, Social Justice Party, the DSA. So it's a massive split of. So you can tell me
people are just getting involved.
Which is sort of fine, but it's not a critical mass like it was for Sanders. Now you have all these people that are going to go into sectarianism now.
Well, maybe that's what we'll probably talk about a little bit.
Yeah.
But back to the original question to you was about the potential for a third party, whether it's drafting Bernie for a People's Party or something else. What are your thoughts on efficacy of that sort of pursuit?
I think, what the DSA is doing this weekend too is a notable thing, which is okay, what are the 5 or 6 things? So not make a goddamn laundry list like Occupy Wall Street was every goddamn issue.
A million things,
we couldn't solve any of them because it was just a laundry list of oppressions. So, what are 6 or core 5 things that, you can only put so much goddamn laundry into the washing machine. And it was like a fucking laundry list. I saw it, even though Occupy is we'll come up with a giant list that will never be accomplishable because we have complaints and grievances.
Just go through experience, go through your day and just count everything that you see where there's oppression involved.
Yes,
every
and it's okay, that's great, but how is that a strategy? Right? Yeah. Those are grievances. That's not a strategy. Yeah. And that's not even a tactic. Occupy was a tactic, not a strategy.
This is why I think we got so jazzed about and are continuing to be jazzed about learning from, looking at, keeping up with, and hopefully building solidarity with the folks over in the UK and the surge of the Labour Party and their platform.
Because they just did it better.
Because it's some sort of example, recent, current example of this sort of gaining momentum and working in a political way that may very well, maybe even this year, lead to.
Well, and the thing is,
another election because
Corbyn, because Sanders can deliver these powerful, big-hearted, fiery speeches, where Corbyn can deliver great speeches, but you wouldn't call them, fiery pulpit, preaching. And so he would have to defer to the manifesto. And I think people just attached everything to Bernie rather than an actual manifesto. And that's the thing. So I think if we come up with 4 or 5 things, we forget about political candidates. We start embracing ideas.
Okay, so should we be paying attention to the Democrats and hoping that the Democrats adopt some kind of progressive platform?
I think we should
should we be trying to like establish or build an alternative party?
I think the problem is because it's the burners, and there's a difference between burners and Bernie-crats, right? Bernie-crats are people that want to take over the Democratic Party. Burners are burners. They have values and ideas, and they don't.
What do you mean burners are burners?
Okay, so burners
are the people who believe in the value, the socialists.
Burners, exactly. Yeah. So that the values, and they don't care about the political parties. They care about the values and ideas.
Is it burners with an E or burners with a U?
Yeah, exactly. Why not? Yeah, and there's also burners. That's a whole other thing. We might get there in a Mad Max future. But I mean, the notion is that looking out, if you're a millennial and you're looking out, you look at the fractionalization of the burner movement. You're like, why should I get involved? Because I don't see critical mass in any of them. So it's hard to imagine, like in 2018, the Social Justice Party will be bigger, or the Green Party will be bigger.
Right.
It's hard to even imagine that the Democrats will reform their ways, and every inclination shows that they're in a deep freeze from people's needs, and they're not even recalcitrant. I mean, they're beyond that. They're just resistant to any kind of apology for what they did, and that they're
been doing for decades. Yeah.
You know, there's a phrase that the Democratic Party is the graveyard for all social movements. So it co-opts it, it euthanizes it, it strips the class awareness of those social movements.
Yep.
And Naomi Klein talks about really beautifully, and this changes everything, about how every social movement that had revolutionary potential became ultimately reformist because the class part could not be accepted.
So there's probably no way that the Democratic Party in the U.S. could take the sort of turn that the Labor Party is experiencing now.
Well, it's the structure. You have a delegate system versus a party-led membership due system. And right now it's on the books. It's illegal to do party membership dues, which would be the greatest way of actually changing the Democratic Party, is move away from funders and corporate funders for their headquarters. I mean, their headquarters is built by one of their funders. I mean, it's literally built by corporate money. And so it would be great if you could create a Democratic Party that was a membership fee system, and then you do monthly dues. Then you could actually operate with a small budget, but everybody would know that you're not in the pocket of special interests. You're actually operating almost like a really grassroots union. And so people would be much more open to the comments of the Democratic Party if they weren't colluding with the same corporate interests as the Republicans, essentially blurring the distinction between the parties. But it's right now in the books, you can't use, from what I know, you can't actually have a political party membership due system, where in Norway, 74% of the money is public financing, and then 26% is membership party dues. So they have a much cleaner system. So the problem is, like, how do you create a Democratic Party that wants to let go of its corporate donors? How do you talk them into it?
It doesn't seem that
possible.
That's very, very likely.
They don't want to lose that. They don't want to lose. You're asking them to lose their income.
This is the neoliberal establishment that we are.
We're locked into. And that's what Bernie had said in a really dark comment. Is like, they want the first row. They want the first level of the Titanic, right?
But here's the problem: if we are going to implement policy,
we should care about,
that works for everyone,
Medicare for all, basic income,
these sorts of things, there has to be a seat at the table.
Yeah,
there has to be taking up some level of power within the current structure to enact, even if it's like just reform of campaign financing or anything else.
Just the simple.
So there has to be a means to get there. So what if we're not under the flag of the Democrats? What's
the one thing we could do is think about where you gave the Democratic Party, its corporate organizational board, a kind of ultimatum, like let's say a date. What if the Bernie-crats had said, "Look, you either get rid of all corporate donations by this date, or we leave, right, entirely." And then move into another political party.
Do you think an ultimatum like that is going to do anything?
Yes, it would. Because how is it going to happen? I mean, Keith Ellison actually backed down on corporate donations in order to try to win the chairship of the party. And it's like, well, what does he mean if he's now kneeling down to the same corporate interests? Yeah. So how big of a difference would he have been to Tom Perez?
I mean, I think this is the thing that back to your point, it seems, we're just going to always be lost in the what if this, we're lost in this stupid television style debate about strategy within the current structural constraints. If we're like, is the party going to pivot, or is that party going to are they going to move left, or what have you? When we don't know how it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Let's say we don't know. Maybe if there's a groundswell for a new party, a people's party, maybe a people's party without a celebrity politician's name tied to it. That's not Bernie for a people's party, but a people's party. Maybe that's a thing. But more important, would argue, is like, all right, let's first talk about the policy stuff. What sort of policy platform do we want?
Line up for the candidates that best embody them, or are more likely to execute them. Yeah. And forget about the cult of personality.
Put the ideas first.
Get rid of celebrity worship.
The policy
in the driver's seat. Yes. And that was the most beautiful thing about the Labor Party's movement, was that people actually read the manifesto.
Yeah.
They actually, and they're like, I don't know about Jeremy Corbyn, but I love the manifesto. Yeah. And it's costed. Whereas the Tory party didn't cost theirs, and it was full of shit, like the dementia tax. Whoever came up with the dementia tax deserve a hug. And then fox hunting, just Looney Tune shit,
ludicrous.
And forcing the elderly to use their house to pay for the costs, so cutting social costs for care. Yeah. And so essentially draconian austerity bullshit. And the effect of that is, even though when the election occurred, Corbyn didn't win outright the majority, he effectively changed the discourse of what was possible for the Tory party. Right. So they're not talking about austerity anymore. Right. They're not talking about fox hunting. They're just like, they're ignoring their own. They've essentially
this
just
is what the
it.
effect is that they're having to pivot towards, or open up at least the appearance of being amenable towards what the people actually want.
Yeah, and so there might be this kind of weird Boris Johnson thing where there's appeals to populism that go beyond just populism, where they actually have a platform where they, in order to compete with a growing and more powerful Labor Party, start taking in left positions like basic income and those sorts of things. Right. So that's possible, but you're right. I think the problem is among everyone, because it's a focus on, I'll put my activism creating a new third party or getting Bernie to work for the People's Party, is that we should just all get together and say, what are the policies?
And
what do we want?
Yeah, and whatever group we might be involved in our efforts to get involved and make a difference, whether it's Greenpeace or Black Lives Matter or the Green Party or the Social Justice Party or with unions or DSA.
We should be agnostic. Anything. We should be agnostic about political parties and candidates.
Yeah,
because we know that candidates are here or there.
Yep.
We can't trust them. I mean, can't even trust Bernie the same way we can after he went after and supported Hillary Clinton.
And agnostic towards organizing groups.
Yes, absolutely. Right? And so we say, okay,
we don't need this sectarian, tribal bickering.
And you will need that coalition.
We need coalition.
If there's no critical mass on any of these parties, then we need a coalition about policies.
And as activists, it's always the activist collection of folks is always going to be minority of folks.
Yes.
Most people just trying to fucking pay the bills, God damn it, and take care of their kids on the weekend, and hopefully,
or they're escaping into worlds that comfort them, right?
Going to church on Sunday, or normal people shit.
Yeah, and we're putting our emotions into social transformation, which is what activists do.
But it needs to embrace everybody.
Absolutely, it's going to be dirty.
All of us.
It's going to be dirty. It's going to be messy. It's going to be filled with just the kind of gossip and intrigue that you'd have at a Girl Scouts meeting.
What's going to be
Girl Scouts meeting?
What's going to be filled with
gossip and intrigue?
I know what. Where?
You're not listening. I said Girl Scouts.
I know, but what's going to have this?
The success of the social movement we're creating.
Social movements are going to have this. I think that's just a point to remember, that we are humans and we are not perfect. No relationships are perfect.
There'll be unrequited hit-ons at a social gathering, or someone flashing someone.
People are going to offend somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. The microaggressions are going to happen.
There are going to be people that take offense to us that we're two white guys.
If we have a culture that's so toxic where we block people out immediately from the larger social aims, we're number one, not going to change their behavior. Yeah. And we're not going to even get the material comforts we need for all of us, regardless of it. I mean, if you believe in single payer, it means that you think also evil people should have health care.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
No, Donald fucking Trump should get free health care.
His kids should have free education.
Free education and free home.
Yeah.
I mean, so not free. When we say free, like through the state structures of taxation,
through socialism, right? Through socialism, actual socialism.
Yeah.
And so
as a path towards moneyless,
this
stateless
social
future,
transformation should be about policy. And for me, there are so few activists in the world that I am very forgiving of weird things about them because they're doing activism.
Yeah.
They're like little diamonds.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm very non-judgmental, even less judgmental about activists than any other type of person.
So you forgive me for smoking cigarettes?
Absolutely, because I just had some cow mucus in my milk.
Okay.
So
but I treated you to a lovely vegan.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
I didn't treat you. You paid for yourself.
Best Thai restaurant I've been to.
I brought you to a lovely vegan meal earlier.
And that really helps defer my guilt about watching Okja. So, Bong Joon-ho's film. But I think...
Or your guilt about eating meat after watching Okja.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, fill in the gap
absolutely.
there. So, hey, lucky for us. A few weeks ago, I jotted down a few things.
Oh.
Yeah. I was like, there's this stuff everybody's saying out there. It seems like, and we talked about a lot of these things. And, most of these things are in the Labor Manifesto, or some of them. And more or less, these are on... This is the Sanders. Most of this is Sanders.
It's kind of on a lot of them, right?
Yeah. So I was like, I wrote down just on my notebook real quick this should be platform ideas
for 2018, 2020, right?
Yeah. The immediate next.
So like renewable
cycles.
Energy.
So first, and this may be actually probably because it is sort of in the last few decades, the most pressing issue among the American public seems to have been healthcare issues, but universal single-payer healthcare or Medicare for all probably should be the headline, like the leading issue.
Yep.
And I think the DSA has been talking about that as the biggest thing.
Especially now that the Republicans never had an actual idea.
Yeah, with everything
so
that's going on.
Obamacare is the only consensus thing that you can build
The thing
off
is,
of.
Obamacare is a Republican healthcare plan.
Exactly, from the Heritage Foundation and Nixon.
Where do we go from here?
Yeah, as we said in other episodes, it's from the Heritage Foundation in the 70s with Nixon. So
universal single-payer healthcare, a renewable energy plan.
3, is that 3?
That's 2. Universal basic income, 3. A divestment from the military and police, a demilitarization of our communities.
End a war that has no end, the war on terror.
Yeah, to end the war on terror. Tuition-free education. Your thing there, we've been talking about.
28th
Amendment.
Money out of politics.
Money out of politics.
Get that dirty shit out.
Public financing. And a $15 minimum wage.
So 7 things.
7 things.
7 things. That's a lucky number? 7 is a lucky number.
There you go. Okay.
There you go. If it's number 9, I'm going to shit my pants because John Lennon told me to not trust the number 9.
Number 9.
Number 9.
Number 9.
Yeah, so 7 sounds good because it's not too long, it's not too big, but it's not too small where it feels like it's not multi-platform, multi-connectional kind of thing. It compels people to think in an intersectional way. So I think that's good. And once again, these things are not going to end racism. They're not going to end misogyny. But once again,
they're not going to get us to a fully automated luxury communist utopian world. They're going to open up the socialism doors.
But they will do the best at moving to a golden square,
moving us closer
to
towards
the golden square.
Food, shelter, healthcare, and education for everyone. So 7 policy directions: renewable energy, universal basic income, single payer healthcare, demilitarization, tuition-free education, money out of politics, and a $15 minimum wage.
So do you know which ones of these 7 are the ones that don't show up on all of the platforms? So we know this would easily fit in DSA, certainly fit in Green Party. I would say that the demilitarization part doesn't really show up in our revolution. Which was a decided
that's more the Black Lives Matter folks.
Well, that's the central core of Black Lives Matter.
Exactly.
BLM really wants to put that in there.
And we're totally with that. Abolish the police.
Absolutely. Disgusting, sad stuff.
And $15 minimum wage isn't necessarily, I think that's part of Bernie's platform,
that was,
right?
Yeah. Well, he adopted it from union struggles like SEIU and others that were fighting called the Fight for 15. And the Fight for 15, by the way, I was looking at some old Occupy Riverside photos, and that started in Occupy 2011. That tells you how that had slowly generated into a way where it's now a consensus discussion. that was a fringe thing in Occupy. I mean, among the general public, there were signs for fight, for 15 minimum wage, but it wasn't called Fight for 15.
Right.
And so Occupy actually had an influence on union organizing because they saw, like, look, it did something. They got attention when unions haven't. And of course, the only problem with the Fight for 15 is we know now on studies about LA rent costs that you'd have to make $33 an hour to afford a 2-bedroom.
15 is not even a livable wage.
It won't address long-term needs. And of course, one of the things that I have a problem with when I see the Fight for 15 is it doesn't adjust for inflation. It should be it doesn't make it for a good postcard, but Fight for 15 adjusts to inflation. And that's really, that would be a great thing. I mean, just by that self, I mean, if you were to adjust it to inflation, you wouldn't have to constantly keep fighting for a minimum wage increase, And so that seems like even more powerful as an idea, where we say that's the baseline level of how we can get.
Yeah, I mean, this could very well just be guaranteed living wage.
Oh, or basic income as well. But
I mean, I think
on top of the basic income,
I think they
work together.
And also, when we dive into talking about basic income too, looking at the potential effects of a basic income also suggests that it will push wages up. That will push the wage floor up, because if you have the freedom and the mobility, especially when paired with a single payer healthcare system, and you have that mobility to have a safety net under you if you need to relocate, move, leave a job, look for a better, more enjoyable, more fulfilling job, that then wages need to be higher.
So we have these 7 things. Let me go back.
Okay.
Renewable energy to fight climate change, 1. Universal basic income, 2. Universal single payer, 3.
Yeah.
The demilitarization of the military-industrial complex.
Yeah.
And then tuition-free education, money out of politics, and the 15-hour minimum wage. So those are 7 policy platforms we just discussed. Do we say, dear political party, dear politician, do you sign on to these things? We could make it a social contract theory. So we could say, do you believe in these 7 things? And that becomes a litmus test.
Right.
So we could say from now, forget about whether Bernie's going to be healthy or not, or if he's going to run in 2020, or if Kamala Harris is going to run or not, and is she corporate Dem? Why don't we start saying, do you believe in these 7 things?
Yeah.
And then if they believe in these 7 things, then okay, we'll support them, regardless of political party.
And also, especially if we're talking about established politicians, that they can say all day, up and down, that they believe in something. Like we know, like Anthony Rendon, for instance, and single payer.
But this is the thing is
he believes in it.
Okay, but
he'll fucking block it.
But there's ways in which you can tie this to a kind of social contract theory.
But it's more like, are you committed to these things?
Well, okay. Anecdote is, let's look at the right. So Grover Norquist had this own version of Contract with America. Grover Norquist is the famous guy that obsesses about taxes are slavery and taxes
and so taxation is theft.
And it's exactly. So the Republicans, when they do their primaries, they have to sign this Grover Norquist document that they will not raise taxes.
It's just like occurring to me how hilarious that phrase is, taxation is theft. Because
capitalism is theft. My wages are theft. When you pay me, you're stealing money from me.
Here, I'm going to ask you to.
Okay.
We just talked about how the show notes.
Little digression. Jesse's digression. This is weird because I do this shit. Now you're doing it.
Hey,
okay, go for it. Go for it.
Yes.
Reciprocity. Go for it.
So we were talking about how to tune our show notes to be a little more digestible.
Yeah.
Because we've been
it's turning in David Foster Wallace Infinite Jest with the footnotes. Right. Yeah.
The show notes are kind of like the whole
and
essays
we're two white guys. It's already dangerous
unto themselves. But here's one thing I'm going to ask you to put it. But I've lost my train.
The 6 pages of show notes. It sounds like we're tap dancing. Show notes. But yeah, what do you want me to put in there, motherfucker?
There is a YouTube clip that I want you to put in there about
hard-hitting news.
No, about
Richard Wolff?
Richard Wolff.
Oh yeah,
okay.
Well, it's Richard Wolff.
So there's a Richard Wolff YouTube clip, if I can find it, or maybe I saw it on Facebook.
Surplus and value labor stuff.
Yeah, where he just basically explains how capitalism is theft of
surplus versus
Surplus labor.
necessary
So,
labor.
anyways.
Necessary labor, but
Simple,
surplus labor,
yeah,
and surplus
yeah.
labor is profit.
Right, exactly. So,
But he doesn't bring in, which is also is ecological damage. So the profit of damaging the earth.
yeah.
So,
anyways.
but yeah, that's in the classic Marxist theory. That's how profit exists: is taking the surplus labor from the worker and making it profit.
Theft.
And theft. So when you say taxation is theft,
Profit is theft.
yeah, absolutely, exactly. Thank you. Woo! That
we go.
is. I just have to tell you one thing about capitalism: profit is theft.
There you go.
Don't talk about it as some magical thing that happens out of thin air.
No.
You're fucking people over
Yeah.
when you have a profit system.
Yeah.
And not only that, but fucking over the earth. So these 7 things should be, well, we can be agnostic about political parties or
You can be agnostic. You can be a nasty woman. You can be.
what do you deliver the goods? And so Grover Norquist and many of these primaries, they have to sign this like contract. It's like you promise never to raise taxes ever because of George Bush,
Right.
the 41 president, President 41. So he had said no new taxes, had raised taxes, and that was part of why supposedly Bill Clinton won, other than the fact that there was a recession.
Eat my shorts, no new taxes or something?
Yeah, or read my lips. Eat my shorts, I think, is
Bart Simpson.
The Simpsons. Yeah, you really had a messed up 90s.
No.
All right, so yeah, we're obviously kids from the 90s. But I mean, the idea is, of course, that we could develop something like that has a pull where, contract with America and when after Clinton got elected in 92, how 94 worked was contract with America, where all the Republicans said, we're going to take back America with this new contract that's going to make a better America because we've been taken over. And this is what happens with both political parties.
What my thought is that these 7 things, this platform, has the potential to do what we've seen the Labor Party manifesto do a little bit, which is broad appeal. These are things that we've talked about a number of these, how, not all of them, but especially when we talked about healthcare and, we look at, again, money in politics and climate, renewable energy, like polling data suggests majority of Americans are in favor of these things.
I would say about 5 of them. Definitely. I
Five of them definitely.
I think the ones that are harder to pull out is probably demilitarization and probably basic income.
But this is how, you think about, well, okay, how will these work, right? It's a divest to invest, right? Let's divest from this systems of oppression and hierarchy.
Absolutely.
Right? Let's divest from all of these money-making pyramid schemes.
That's the connection
of the military-industrial complex and the big ag and big pharma.
So that's how we get from 5 to 7, is we say the parts that are really expensive that are wasting money on, like fossil fuel subsidies, which we could actually, just by getting rid of the fossil fuel indices, we could have universal free education in the United States. So something like 60 to 70 billion is the cost for tuition-free education under the current economic system, and we have subsidies of about 70 billion for fossil fuels.
How do we not even getting into our previous discussion of what actually does cost mean, but in real dollar terms in this current economy, well, how do you pay for a basic income, and how do you pay for a single-payer system, and how do you pay for a big program of
what are we already paying for?
Of investing in renewable energy? Well, we're divest from these things that are actually,
Well, or you maybe use a better word than divest, because divest almost seems like we're taking. We say transfer. How about wealth or spending transfer? So why don't we just transfer this money here? So we could build these bombs, but I could give you $300 a month as a start of universal basic income. So what do we say? Okay, we spend $600 billion on the military every year at least. So what if we cut it to half and then give that as a monthly paycheck to voters? They would love that. But how are you going to do that without, when there's a lobbyist system of 16 military lobbyists for every politician in Congress? So how are you going to do that under these formidable circumstances? And number one is by supporting candidates that believe in these 7 things. We'll call them the sassy 7, the super 7 or super size 7, right? Whatever it looks like it's going to be in the back of a McDonald's bag.
Yeah,
we should come up with a term for this platform, Jesse, because we're the cutting edge of
sexy 7.
We're the anarchist vanguard of the non-vanguard.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. We're the non-vanguard of the vanguard.
Well,
but
I won't self-appoint.
These seven things are what we should start attaching candidates and political parties to.
Yeah, this is not arriving at the utopian sphere.
This is a transition to a Scandinavian model.
Right.
Exactly.
This is widening the cage.
It's the cage of the state.
This is what should already be normal. Mm-hmm. This is not directly attacking capitalism.
This is you as a rabbit in a cage where you get fed by a loving owner.
And this is also why I think these
you get taken out of the cage occasionally.
Well, I think these 7 things, because like you keep referring to, or you referred to a few times about Scandinavian countries having the highest
happiness. 7 of the 10 happiest places are in what you call the Nordic countries.
The Nordic countries.
Nordic countries is probably a better term. But 7 out of the 10. The other ones are just kind of also have bad weather, right? But that's a whole other argument. But they come closest to meeting the golden square, and they come very close. In fact, some of those things they meet.
Yeah.
Completely.
Right. And so this just gets us a little more into that group, right? And hopefully, right, I think the strategic thing here is, and as anarchists, as anarchism as a vision of a utopian world without unnecessary or unjustified means of or systems of hierarchy, this opens the doorways towards getting towards that sort of future.
Yeah, and this will break that sectarian stuff that we're going to run into potentially as 2018, 2020 come, which is like, okay, where's the critical mass? Well, there's a critical mass on this. That's already agreed on. And when people say shorthand, when they say I'm a burner, they're saying shorthand. I kind of believe in these 7 things. I mean, even if though Bernie didn't talk about these 7 things, most people that support Bernie are to the left of Bernie in many cases, especially the activists. So they would already agree to these things. So let's just focus not on Bernie, not on political parties, not who's running 2018, 2020. Let's focus on these 7 things as a guiding light to the golden square.
Right. So what about the things that we've left that I didn't write down here that, reading in, you could probably blame me for identity reasons.
Or
like, what about immigration?
Fat shaming. I get fat shamed at home by my children. I'm just joking.
Okay. No, like what? Like what about women's reproductive rights?
Absolutely.
What about immigration?
Well,
I think these probably are parts of all of these things, or a number of these, right? So, for instance, SB 562, the single payer proposal in California that's currently being blocked by
Anthony Rendon.
Go knock on his office door, say what's up.
And so,
but that that, like you said, you had said, and we were discussing it, is would cover everybody, even undocumented folks in California.
Oh yeah, and this is the thing is like, if you address just simply the money and politics aspect, you can accelerate all the issues not listed on here. Reproductive rights. Well, number one, a lot of these nonprofit male-dominated systems are funding it.
Here's an idea. This is happening in real time. Slingshot 7.
Oh, I like that. Slingshot 7. Oh, I love it. It's like a David and Goliath story.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we can do an illustration for that. You do the art. I'll just do the words.
Okay.
I'll do some really creative writing where it says, "Fuck you," with a little David and a little slingshot.
Okay.
The Slingshot 7.
Slingshot.
It sounds like a cool punk band with a little bit of an electronic synthesizer component.
Oh, we can do that. I got this stuff right here. Want to start playing?
Yeah, let's do this.
There's a guitar. Here's a synthesizer. Got the keyboard
right over here. We'll do the Slingshot 7. I love that. This is we're talking about from our last podcast. What must be done. Well, let's look at the fact that these are the things that we can do. We can
got to start somewhere, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And all the doctrinaire, sectarian, tribal bickering about, are you into this camp or that camp enough? Are you too much with? Are you with this group or that group enough?
A kind of ruthless Frank Underwood pragmatism is where we can exercise this towards a core value. So ruthless pragmatism is a term that Kevin Spacey's character Frank Underwood used. That's not bad as an idea. Let's be ruthless about our pragmatism.
Ruthless pragmatism, so that we can open the door and utopia hard.
And utopia hard, as China Miéville talks about in the journal Salvage. So that we have to utopia hard. And part of that policy is, once again, not only that we can't address all of the things, and reproductive rights, LGBT rights, we're transgender rights. We're not dealing with everything of the 7. But many of the things that aren't on this list will be addressed by, number one, people having a larger cage to think in. So they can think about other types of oppression. Number two, money in politics.
Yeah.
That accelerates the small voices that are saying profoundly beautiful things and gives them an amazing amplifier.
Oh, yeah.
So these other things can get accelerated.
Right.
But we can't do an entire Occupy Wall Street list.
No, but
because the longer the lists get, the harder it is to win things.
This root cause thing.
Yes.
Whatever the issue is, it's always the politician is being two-faced, is lying, is blocking the progress of something because there's money in that pocket.
So if we think of like the three areas of rhetoric, money in politics is the logic part.
Yes.
Healthcare is the pathos part. And the ethics part is the climate crisis, renewable energy. So those are like the three things we could put at the top.
Right, and this doesn't even, like we talked about in the episode on food, about, biggest impact to the climate crisis is the animal agriculture. There isn't anything directly in here in
about
these seven
animal cruelty
about animal cruelty or animal agriculture, but attacking at least what is commonly accepted as the source of climate crisis.
Well, and the highest
energy,
the highest rates of vegetarianism and veganism is in Scandinavia or the Nordic
and the highest rates of electric car ownership.
And Denmark has the lowest sperm count.
Right. So hey,
renewable energy, lower population. You're happy about that?
We didn't get into this. We'll get into this later about
subway conversation on sperm.
Actually, the biggest impact on the climate crisis in terms of choice is whether or not you make another human being.
We'll put up the graph on this. So the graph about this is a lifestyle kind of argument, but it's a necessary one to have, which is what are the things that you can do to reduce climate change. It doesn't address infrastructure.
Don't have children.
Yeah, flying international flights, driving a car that's petroleum-based, having an electric car versus not having it. Yep. And so there's a lot of factors in there. But once again, beyond our own internal guilt about choice, right? That choice, it comes with responsibility. As Ursula K. Le Guin said about anarchy, that one who choosing the choice of responsibility understands the obligation of that choice, right? And the responsibility that comes with it. And so we should be engaged in these fights for the Slingshot 7. But at the same time, know that we're not addressing everything. And it's not going to be a perfect list.
It's a slingshot.
Exactly. But from that, greater, deeper, more quiet moral questions will surface.
Yes. We need to widen this cage so we can do that nuanced, deep, reflective, meditative, philosophical thinking.
Absolutely.
Yes. And speaking of where a slingshot might take us, we've got an out-of-this-world outro from one of the visitors to our table at Politicon last weekend.
My name is Razmik Sarkisian, and I want to be represented by a government that's concerned with the real national security issues. How is the human race going to survive the sun's explosion? How are we going to get to a different universe if this one seems to be on the verge of destruction? These are the real issues that we should be caring about, and I want an earthling government that will represent my needs.
well,
Slingshot 7.
That's a humanistic exceptional claim. He's not talking about AI. I'm worried about that. I'm like, shit, let's talk about going to another universe, but fuck, AI? Well, if it's Ex Machina, that's even more terrifying because, we should be talking about how to prevent earthquakes from happening or know when earthquakes are happening. The money we could use from military industrial. So we could be using 1/10, 1/100th of the military industrial complex budget to prevent mass death from earthquakes. Yeah, you bet. Building 10 times larger hadron colliders. So wonderful quote. Wonderful person.
Yeah, thanks for the outro. If you would like to send us an outro to be included on a future episode, visit thefutureisamixtape.com to see the little short instructions, but basically just says record something, keep it under 2 minutes, send it to thefutureisamixtape@gmail.com.
Yeah, so keep that in mind. This Slingshot 7 is what we need to work for. If you got a better title, go ahead and
share
us on
a
Facebook
title
or
on
the
Facebook.
Twitter.
The
Twitter page.
At Future Mixtapes on Twitter and facebook.com/thefutureisamixtape. Well, what do you think, Matt?
I think we're moving towards a utopian impulse here. So we're finally talking about solutions. And so the solution number one, here's the Slingshot 7. Let's not be sectarian. Let's be put on the adult pants and like not the adult depends, but the adult pants, the part where you can actually take a shit somewhere and work for these 7 things.
Yeah.
For the time being, just keep out of this Bernie electoral cycle bullshit and just focus on
celebrity
getting
stuff.
people passionate about ideas again.
Yes, let's talk about ideas. Please join in this conversation. We want to hear from you. We want to talk to you. We want to
come on our newsletter and put your email in there, and I'll have some exit clips from things that we haven't posted on the general podcast. And of course, we have show notes you can look at.
Oh yeah, deep show notes. Deep novel-length show notes.
It's like Wikipedia on acid.
Yeah.
So great.
All right. Thanks so much for listening. All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.